This is James Lupton here with the Fighter Podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today with Kerry Kayes for the episode on Ricky Hatton. First of all, Kerry, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Really do.
No worries. It's a pleasure. And thank you very much for coming on. Let's talk about the very beginning when you first started with Ricky. I believe it was Billy Graham asked you to come and work with him on some diet plans, first of all. And you knew Billy through his brother. Talk to me there and start with that point. Back in about 2000, I believe it was.
Well, he just broke up there a little bit, but I got the gist of it. Billy Graham's brother, Joe Graham, was a strength athlete, quite a strong man. He actually had a couple of world records in various lifts, and a very intelligent man and very forward-thinking in sport science all those years ago when Billy was boxing. So that's quite a long time ago. And unfortunately, Joe got killed in a road accident. So God rest his soul, he's no longer with us. But I knew Joe quite well. And Joe must have spoke to Billy about me. And so Billy kind of trusted me because of Joe. And I've said this story 1,000 times. So Billy came to see me at my gym, Better Bodies. And he said, his exact words were, I've got this young prospect that I think's going to be good, Kerry, but he's really shit with his diet. And I was wondering, could you just do a little bit of nutritional work with him? And I said, yeah, of course I will. We'll meet him. I'll come to your gym tomorrow. What's his name? And he said, Ricky Hatton. So Billy's exact words were, I think he's going to be good, Kerry. So how's that for? So Billy knew from day one.
Absolutely, he wasn't wrong, was he? You mentioned that he also said...
Well, excuse me butting in there. He wasn't wrong on both occasions. One, he was going to be good, and two, he's shit with his diet.
Well, my question was going to be, how shit was he with his diet?
Oh, as shit as you can get. You know, it's probably still shit now. You know what Ricky's like. He was just... how can I put it? As an athlete, he was passionate, but day-to-day living, he was just a real Jack the Lad, and real funny guy, and real, and so he just did not live the life.
Talk to me about the first time you met Ricky. He's a very out-there character. He loves a joke, like I said, a bit of Jack the Lad. What was your first time meeting Ricky, and what was that like? What was your impression of him?
Well, I went up to a gym in Hattersley that Billy was using at the time, and I sat in the changing rooms and I talked a little bit about nutrition to him, Matthew Hatton, I think Steve Bell was there, and I just was talking nutrition, tried to educate them a little bit, kept it very basic, and he was just having a laugh, just the Ricky Hatton that we know. What a lot of people that might not have met Ricky or don't know Ricky, they won't know that Ricky Hatton, the same Ricky Hatton, 24 hours a day, on or off camera. That the camera bit is not, it's not put on. That is Ricky. And Matthew, to be fair,
Absolutely. I mentioned there, it's about the year 2000 you started working with Ricky and Billy's fighters. So that would have been about the time when he fought John Thaxton. He won the British title that year. So I don't know, sort of around how...
I think it was just after that. So
it's been about late 2000 then. Yeah. And you started off just giving diet plans and tips, as you mentioned there, but a couple of years later, you came on board full-time. Talk to me about that transition, going onto the board full-time there, working a bit more than just the diet tip.
Well, I owned a gymnasium called Better Bodies Gymnasium, a very, very, very successful bodybuilding gymnasium. We used to have British champions every single year. At the British Championships at Wembley, where Ricky fought John Thaxton, in that same conference centre, the British champions were there. They used to have 4 men's categories and 3 ladies categories, then 2 overalls. And one year, my gym, Better Bodies, won 3 of the 4 men's British Championships, but the overall as well, and 1 of the women's and the overall. So it was a very, very successful gymnasium. And I was very proud of that. Now, Billy was in transition And Billy ended up moving into my gymnasium with the boxers. He built, him and Bobby Rimmer built a boxing gymnasium at the unit next to my gym, Better Bodies, on the same floor. And we knocked a doorway through, so it became the same gym. So all those pictures of Ricky Hatton you saw with all the celebrities and Sky Television, they were all in Billy's boxing gym, but it was in my Better Bodies gym. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So once they moved into the boxing gym, which was in Better Bodies, then obviously I saw them every day. And what Billy wanted me to do was do some strength work with the guys. And I always believed that, and I still believe, that strength work should be done to make the boxer a better boxer, not take over the boxing. So you're there to help the boxing, not become the strength coach and you're better than the boxing. So I used to say to Billy, I'd rather do the strength work after they finish training boxing, even though they're tired, because I don't want to do the strength work before the boxing so that they're tired for the main sport, which is boxing. So I used to go in the boxing gym, watch them box, help Billy out a little bit. And then they used to come into the weightlifting gym. And I used to train Ricky, Matthew Hatton, Stephen Bell, Gomez, Arnie Farnell, Macklin. So they all used to come in the gym afterwards. So that's when it became more hands-on.
You mentioned obviously your gym, Better Bodies, and your background was in bodybuilding, as you say. How was the transition to boxing? Was it the same almost in terms of what your aspect of the job was?
Well, yeah, because bodybuilding is probably 60, 70% nutrition. It really is. And bodybuilding's not a technical sport. There's only, it's not a reflex sport. It's not, you just pick a weight up and you move it from A to B till you fail. And the hardest part of bodybuilding is picking the correct weight up. So calculating what weight you can do to do proper technique and failure. And then mental, very, very strong mentally bodybuilding, because it's 52 weeks a year, there's no off time. So I was involved with Billy Graham in the boxing, but not in the technical side of the boxing. I was involved in the nutrition and the strength work. So that was pretty easy because there was not a lot different in the bodybuilding. But we didn't do bodybuilding type exercises. We did strength exercises. And when I first started working with Ricky Hatton, he used to fight at 140 pounds. And 10 years later, he was still fighting at 140 pounds. He only went up to 147 twice, but that was for particular matches where he was getting great money, you know what I mean? So we didn't do bodybuilding. If we did bodybuilding, he'd have got bigger. So we got him stronger, not bigger. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. Just to touch on that, you mentioned obviously 10 years at 140 pounds. I don't think people appreciate how difficult it is to maintain a certain weight in boxing for such a long period of time. How difficult was that for Ricky when, as you mentioned, he struggled with his diet?
Well, it is difficult for any athlete. And especially when they sort of get older, they become more manly, they become, and don't forget weightlifting exercises. If you do it a lot, your bones get thicker, your bones get heavier, you know what I mean? But Ricky, I was going to say, he did it quite easy, even though he used to come in the gym right behind the starting line, because as you well know, he used to put 3-4 stone on regular, you know what I mean? But I've got to say this about Ricky Hatton. He was such a disciplined athlete day one of the camp and all the way through the camp. So even though a lot of people see him as a bit of a slack ass in the off season, once that camp started, he was 1,000,000% professional.
For your role in that team, how much more difficult was it to play your part when Ricky was so slack on the off season? Let's say.
Well, I don't want to put him down, because he was when you do everything wrong. So if you go out, you finished a fight, and then you're not fighting again for 4 or 5 months. So you might have 2 months of drinking whatever you want to drink, eating whatever you want to eat. So pizzas, curries, takeaways, pints of Guinness. So the day you stop doing that and then go on to clean food and exercising, you get remarkable results. If somebody walked into a gym that was grossly overweight and wanted to lose weight and was prepared to start training properly, eat clean, and stop eating junk, they can lose 6, 7, 8 pounds a week. But if you have an average person who lives a pretty good lifestyle and they start a regime, you'd be lucky if they lose 1, 2 pounds a week. Do you understand what I mean? So the more you've done it wrong in the off season, the bigger the results when you start doing it correctly.
You mentioned from day one of camp.
That's not an advert, by the way, to do it wrong before you start training.
You mentioned day one of camp, he was very disciplined. He's very dedicated to
Extremely.
With Ricky, I think it's a misconception because he did blow up in weight between fights. People didn't think he was dedicated. Just talk a little bit about how dedicated he was to his sport.
Oh, he was, honest to God, he trained like an animal. He really was, extremely disciplined once he started. He really was, honest to God, he really was. And I don't know if you're going to ask me the question or not, but I'm going to answer a question that you've not answered, because a lot of people do ask me this question. If Ricky Hatton would have been disciplined and lived a correct athlete's life in the off season, would his career have lasted longer? And the answer is, of course, it would have lasted longer, but it wouldn't have rose to the heights it rose. That's my opinion, because he would have been a steady athlete for much longer years. But because he was one of the lads, everyone in Manchester had a pint with him, because he ate pizzas, and that was the brand he became. And all those people that used to watch Ricky Hatton at it was then in them days called the Manchester Evening News Arena. And then all those people who went abroad to Vegas, people say as many as 20, 30,000. They weren't boxing fans. They were Ricky Hatton fans, because they enjoyed his brand. So his lifestyle, his style gave him a brand that the average person could follow.
Absolutely. I was going to actually mention that. Do you feel that the person he was and the character that he is helped with his fan base? Because it's probably one of, if not the biggest British fan bases in boxing history.
Oh, it was unique. It was unique. And we, myself, Billy Graham and others, and all the rest of the lads in the camp, we were almost basking in the same sunshine, you know what I mean? Because it was Ricky, you know what I mean? The people that came to the gym was, you wouldn't believe it. It was every week there was a Gordon Ramsay coming to the gym, you know what I mean? It was the dressing room in Vegas, Brad Pitt and, Angelina Jolie. It was like, Tom Jones. You could not believe the fan base that he, and because I was heavily involved in bodybuilding, and I used to, the conference centre that you mentioned, where John Thaxton, I used to hire that myself for bodybuilding shows. And I used to bring the Ricky Hattons of bodybuilding to London and run massive shows. And they all knew who Ricky was. You know what I mean? It was mad, how famous he became, and still is, I suppose,
Absolutely, certainly a household name, which I suppose every boxer aspires to market themselves to be these days as well.
Absolutely. Bums on seats, you know what I mean? I mean, if he wanted to, he could have fought every month, couldn't he, at the Manchester Arena? Frank Warren would have put him on every month,
Definitely, certainly was a ticket seller.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you mentioned, a long career, some great fights in there. I won't go into all of them. I want to talk about some of the highlights. Costa Zoo, first of all.
Wow.
I mean, unbelievable crowning night. Talk to me about that night.
Well, you know what? Everybody thought he was going to get beat, except Billy Graham and Ricky Hatton. and the immediate team. And I wasn't making predictions or making a decision. I was just following in the wake of Billy Graham and Ricky Hatton. And they knew he was going to win. And if you think about it, everybody says this could be a quiz, you know, what date did Ricky Hatton fight? Everyone says the 4th of June. It was the 5th of June because it was 2:00 in the morning. The bill started on the 4th of June, you know, and funny enough, it was my wife's 50th birthday. So it was my wife's 50th birthday, a typical Jan. You obviously go to the fight, you know what I mean? And so I'll always remember that day, the 4th of June. But it was, I don't know whether you can remember this or not, or a lot of your viewers remember this. That was on the Saturday night, the 4th of June. On the 3rd of June, Frank Warren put a big card on as well on the Friday night. And most of the lads from our gym, Matthew Hatton, Paul Smith, I think Gomez, a few others, Stephen Bell, they all fought on the Friday night, which was great because it meant Billy and Ricky, and I suppose myself, could concentrate on Ricky only on the Saturday night. But when you think about it, the ring walk was 2:00 in the morning on the Sunday morning. And they were just everyone there. And obviously, I mean, I don't know now, but if you think back, Frank Warren, the promoter, and Sky Telly must have had all sorts of special meetings with the Manchester Council, the MEN, Manchester Police, you know what I mean? Because people were not leaving till 3:30 Sunday morning, all spilling out onto Deansgate, you know? So it was an incredible night. It was an incredible night. And I was in the corner. I wasn't doing much. I was just picking the bucket up and washing the gum shield and stuff. I was just basically labouring in the corner. And I was looking over at Costa Zoo's corner and I could see him quit. And I remember saying, Billy's quit, you know what I mean? And that's when they all turned around. And I think at the time it was massive. But when you look back on it now in the history of boxing, it was probably bigger than any of us, including Sky Telly, thought. You know what I mean? Because it's just iconic, isn't it? It's one of their moments. Where was you on that moment? I'll give you a little side story. On the Monday night after every fight, we always went out, but it was like probably 6 of us. So Matthew Hatton, Ricky Hatton, myself, you know, a couple of the clubs. So it was a little unique spot of people. And Ricky had been out all day Sunday. I had a bodybuilding at the show on that Sunday I had to go to. And we met up in Manchester about 5:00 Monday night. And we ended up in a club called Long Legs, which, as you can probably imagine, is a lap dancing club, you know what I mean, in Chinatown. So we were all having a drink in Long Legs. And I was at the bar. I went to the bar to buy some drinks. And 2 monstrous men, walked in and walked straight up to the bar. And they had big Texan cowboy boots on, the big buckle belts on the presumably Levi jeans, and they actually had the big cowboy hats on. And they looked down on me, and I went, "You all right, lads?" And they went, "Yeah, man, yeah." And they said something complimentary about Manchester. So I said, "You're far from home, aren't you guys?" So they went, "Yeah, we're big fight fans. We came in for the fight, the Costa Zoo Ricky Hatton fight." I said, "Oh, did you?" Yeah. So they said to me, "Did you go?" So I went, "I was in the corner." And they went, "Hey, you were in the corner. What's he like?" And I pointed to Ricky, and he's having a lap dance. Like, I think he's got one black eye and everything. And he's having a lap dance. I went, "Holy shit," you know what I mean? And then I called him over and I went, "Ricky, these guys are from Texas. They flew in for the fight." And one of the Americans with the Stetson on said, "Let me buy you a drink, Ricky." And Ricky went, "No, let me buy you a drink." And Ricky bought them a drink. So can you imagine them going back to America, fight fans, you know what I mean? So, you know, little stories like that. So that's what made him so pleasing to a lot of people.
Absolutely. And, you know, like I say, it's a memory for those guys that they'll never forget. And it shows the person that
It was a memory for me. You should have seen the girl.
Talking of a couple of American fans there, obviously you had a couple of trips out to Vegas, Mayweather and Pacquiao. Not the results that you guys would have wanted, but what were the trips like?
Well, the first trip was Boston, Colazzo. So he'd split from Frank Warren then, and he was with Dennis Hobson. So after the Costa Zoo fight, he fought Mauser in Sheffield, if you remember. And then the next one was Boston, Colazzo. I'll be honest with you, Billy Graham never wanted that fight. Billy Graham never, ever wanted that fight because he went up to welter. It was called welterweight in them days. So light welter was 140, welter was 147. They changed the name of the weight categories now. And it was in Boston. It was a Don King fighter. If I remember rightly, he was a southpaw. And Billy said it's a bad fight. He never wanted that fight. And it turned out to be a very hard fight. Ricky won, but Ricky had to dig deep. So it was a very hard fight. And I think the next fight was Vegas. And if I'm right, I think it was Uranga at the Paris Hotel. And I remember they did the weigh-in right in the middle of the casino. And we went over to the casino. We were staying at Caesar's Palace, but it was at the Paris Hotel. I think they're all partnerships, you know. And we went over to the weigh-in. I wanted to do a test weigh-in with him. So we went over about, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. The weigh-in was 1 o'clock. And we looked round and there was no barriers. There was no, it was almost in the middle of the casino. And I remember Ricky saying to one of the organisers, listen, mate, you need a few barriers here, you know. And they'd done loads of weigh-ins, they'd done plenty of boxing, so they knew better than Ricky. They knew better. And, you know, it was chaos. It was chaos because I think there must have been 2,000-3,000 people turned up to go into what they thought would be the venue of the weigh-in. And it was just a casino. And there was people on the machines, the one-arm bandits, they were stood on the machines trying to get. And I think that was the first time Vegas realised that from a crowd-pulling point of view, they had someone special. The Mayweather, I don't know if you've seen it, or maybe some of your viewers may have seen it, but HBO did a series called 24/7. I don't know if you've seen it or not. And they had a camera crew with Ricky for a month and a camera crew with Mayweather for a month. And before we got anywhere near the fight, we ended up in America. They laid on private jets for Ricky, private jets for Mayweather. Obviously, we basked in that same glory, you know what I mean? We went to New York, Michigan, Los Angeles. I think we went to Vegas, all in private jets. You know what I mean? And so I knew it was quite big. You know, well, not quite big, ridiculously big. And then the week of the fight, I think we went over there 2 weeks before, and it was just massive. It was just really, really, it was just massive, as you know. And again, just like Costa Zoo, Ricky Hatton, Billy Graham were convinced that they were going to win. And we were convinced in the wake of their opinion. And Ricky says it to this day. His exact words are, I'm not saying I would have won, but the referee, Joe Cortez, certainly spoiled the fight. And when you see an American referee getting booed by Americans, Joe Cortez made a terrible, terrible night of that fight. But it was just massive. And then I don't know the true story, I haven't got a clue, but there were estimates of up to 30,000 Brits when I think it only held 18,000, you know what I mean? So, that was the first weigh-in in America that they, because of the Paris Hotel, they went, so where the fight was at the MGM, they cordoned off out of the stadium for the weigh-in, and I think there were 7,000 or 8,000 people turned up to the weigh-in, and Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, Richard Schaefer at the time, Eric Gomez, they were all in shock. They couldn't believe it. And the MGM Hotel couldn't believe it. And there's a bar at the bottom of the lifts at the MGM called the Circle Bar. And it's the first time ever in the history of the MGM they had to close it because it ran out of beer. It literally ran out of beer. It was mad. It was mad.
Craziness. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder rematch in Vegas a few years back, and it had that similar sort of vibe. You know, there's a massive British crowd, and just for the weigh-in alone as well, it was filled with Brits and Fury fans. Do you think if it wasn't for Ricky Hatton, that wouldn't have happened for anyone else since?
Well, what happened was, it's like everything else, isn't it? Somebody does it, and that starts the domino effect, doesn't it? But it definitely 1,000,000% woke the Americans up to the promotion of a fight at a weigh-in. So Richard Schaefer, as you know, is a very clever man. Oscar De La Hoya, golden boy. They could not believe the Paris Hotel. So therefore, that made them think, let's get it organised for the Mayweather fight. And as you know now, all the big fights in America, the weigh-in is now part of the event instead of something that they've just got to do. So, and I think definitely 1,000,000% that was Ricky Hatton and the people from Britain who made it such a spectacle.
I mentioned earlier, not the result you guys are looking for against Mayweather, first of all. Did you see a change in Ricky? How was Ricky in himself after that? Did you see?
It destroyed him. It was. I mean, if you think about it, one of the biggest fights of the decade, 20, 30,000 people coming from Britain. And don't forget early December. So people like saving up for Christmas. You know, it's not the best time, is it, if you think about it financially? And to be part of that spectacle, a documentary on HBO, by the way, that won an Emmy. It won an Emmy, the 24/7 Ricky Hatton one. The film crew, I met them years later, and they said, the film crew said it was the Ricky Hatton documentary that put them on the map. And to be involved in that, you think, well, I'll take second place. I'll take second place to be involved in that, especially the money that he must have earned. But no, it was awful. It was awful for all of us, to be honest. It was awful for all of us. It was mum and dad, Matthew. It was awful for everyone. And Billy took it bad. But I guess that the bigger the prize, the bigger the disappointment.
It's well documented now, Ricky's mental health problems and things like that later on in his career. Was that something that was obvious or apparent to you guys at the time, or is that something that you did well?
No, honestly, no, it wasn't. He was always dead happy-go-lucky. Always had always wanted a laugh. No, it wasn't. Honest to God, it really wasn't.
Was it a shock to you when you heard that he had struggles?
Yeah, definitely. It was. Yeah, it was a shock. No, it's a shock of anyone who has mental health problems, isn't it? You know, I know a lot of people, and the problem with sport, all sorts of sports, the highs are very high and the lows are very low, aren't they? You know what I mean? And that goes with the training teams as well, doesn't it? And the families and the wives. We all seem to forget the wives, don't we? You know what I mean? The wives and partners. But yeah, it was very, very sad times. Very, very sad times.
I want to talk about something a bit more happier. Tell me some funny stories that you can tell on camera about your time with Ricky.
Ricky, he tells one story, and he's told this in the public, and I actually think it's in his book, so I can say it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, he was. I'm on thin ice here, but stuff it. You know what I mean? He was at some pub, club, nightclub, wherever, and he met a young girl. He was still living at home. In a box bedroom. And he spends 1-2 hours with this girl and they get on extremely well. And she says to him, my mum and dad's away. Do you want to stay at my house tonight? So he's like, wow, you know what I mean? He's in. So she says to him, you've got to have a Durex. So he goes, right. So he goes to the toilet, puts a pound in and gets the packet, goes back to her house where her mum and dad's away. True story, this. Gets in the moment, gets the Durex out, and it's not a Durex, it's one of them toothbrushes that you clean your teeth with. So, you know. So Ricky being Ricky, she's on the estate, Attersley Estate, you know, a big council house estate in Manchester. And there's 2 24-hour petrol stations just up the road. So Ricky, she says, go to the petrol station. So he puts her slippers on, pink slippers, and runs to the petrol station, buys himself a packet of Durex, turns round, runs back. All the houses are the same. He can't find the house. So he's like walking up and down trying to find the house. After about an hour or so, he gives up, goes home, wakes up in the morning, says, his exact words to me was, I thought, have I dreamt that? So he gets out of bed, looks on the floor, there's a pair of pink slippers on the floor. So that's Ricky Hatton. That's in his book. I'm sure that's in his book, so I'm not grassed him up.
That's fantastic. Just last one topic I want to speak about is fighting on too long. Do you feel he always wanted to go out with a win? Do you feel he always had that desire to carry on?
Well, this is where I've got to go up front. When Billy Graham and Ricky Hatton split up, right, it was the Mayweather fight. And after the Mayweather fight, Ricky wanted one more fight, and that was at Man City against Lascano, if you remember, which was incredible, 50-odd thousand at Man City. And after that, Billy didn't really want to do it anymore. And there was a lot of politics going on. And Billy thought Ricky'd finished. And then Ricky, for whatever reason, decided to fight on again. And Billy watched him, and Billy and Ricky split up, you know what I mean? And that's for them to say what's where and why. But I said to Ricky, I've done now as well. I had a big business. I was not spending time in my own gym. I was not spending time with the CMP that I owned at the time. I was devoting too much time. And I said, Ricky, I've done, mate. But I said, this is in his latest book, so I was pleased that he put it in. And I said to him, I'm on the phone 24 hours a day, Ricky. Whatever you want, I'll be on the phone to you. But I said, we don't have to reinvent the diet. You know what you need to eat. You know what you need to do. You know what I mean? Anytime, Ricky, you phone me over 24 hours, but I've done. So Billy went and I went. So the Pacquiao and the carrying on, the guy that he was doing a 10-rounder with at Manchester, I forget his name, beginning with S. Me and Saganko or something. Yeah. Me and Billy weren't involved. Me and Billy was not involved. And that's well documented. It's well documented, you know. So I was looking as an outsider looking in. And the very fact that he got stopped in, I think it was the 4th or 5th round by someone he'd wiped the floor with years ago. Clearly he went on too long, didn't he? But look at this last exhibition fight with Barrera. And look how good he looked. And I was so proud because he texted me, Ricky, and went, Kerry, will you please work the corner for me for this exhibition fight? So I worked the corner for him, and I was dead proud of what he did. And he got me a corner jacket because he knows I like memorabilia. So he got me a corner jacket that I put on in the fight. I've had it framed. And it was a fantastic evening, seeing his mum and dad there, Campbell there. Because I do Campbell's corners now, you know. I don't, you know this and that. I do Campbell's cuts, and I work with Matthew Hatton. So, did he go on too long? I guess he did. But I don't know what is too long. What is too long? You know. I think clearly because how good Ricky looked at the Barrera exhibition fight, clearly Ricky's like most other sportsmen that I know. He needed a date. He needs a goal. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? The average man in the street books a holiday and then starts dieting, don't they? Because they've got a holiday date. You know what I mean? And Ricky clearly needs an event, and it worked for him. You know.
Absolutely, and he looks in fantastic shape, and
great shape.
Well,
and again, what an achievement! I don't know how many years, 10 years since he fought, to do an exhibition fight, 10 2-minute rounds where there's no winners, no losers. And God, see the amount of people that stayed to watch that fight was unbelievable, don't you think?
No, absolutely. Certainly a moment for him to be proud of, and yourself as well, obviously working the corner that night.
Yeah, I felt privileged. I really did. They're doing I don't know if you know this or not, but they're doing a full-length Sky documentary on him.
Okay, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were there on the night filming. They've been here to my house filming, and they're doing a proper Sky documentary on Ricky Hatton, 1.5 hours.
Fantastic. Certainly be a one to watch for all the boxing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Kerry, I want to thank you very much for your time. I won't keep you no longer, but I really, really appreciate it. It's a privilege to speak to you.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it.